بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم عبده ورسوله. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم to another new program of Sulook Al-Islamia. وقد قال سبحانه وتعالى في كتاب العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. وقال سبحانه وتعالى أيضا وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. وقال سبحانه وتعالى أيضا إن هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة وأنا ربكم فاعبدون. Jama'at al-Muslimin, respected viewers, we have a reality that is worrisome. We have a reality that causes us to be extremely sad. It brings tears to the eyes, it makes your heart sad when you look at the reality that the Ummah of Islam is in. When you look at the reality of the condition of this Ummah, and this is the Ummah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises in the three ayat that I just mentioned. Allah subhanahu, in actual fact, want us to ask you a question. Is this the same ummah? Is this the same nation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises in the holy ayah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, that you are the best of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have created. You are the best, you will stay the best, the ummah of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, until the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, until resurrection. So therefore one asks the question, is this really the ummah that Allah praises so much? Not only that, this is the ummah that Allah Ta'ala praises with wasatiyah. What is wasatiyah? Is to take the middle road, to be moderate. And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. And Allah Ta'ala says we have made you a moderate ummah. We have made you a moderate ummah so that you may be witnesses of all of the nations that have been before you, all of the ummah that has been before you, and that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be a witness over all. Again, we ask the question, is this the ummah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises with being polite, with being cordial? Then make sure that unity is something that is there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna hadihi ummatukum ummata wahidatan wa ana rabbukum fa'budun. This ummah of yours, this nation of yours, is but a single nation. You are one ummah. وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ, and I'm your Lord, so therefore worship me. Jama'at al-Muslimin, respected viewers, like we had said, when we look at the reality that plays down today, is that the ummah that we are talking about? Is that the ummah that is being described like that? It breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. Wallah, it breaks your heart. When one sees that the ummah has deviated from manhajillah, from the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed there, deviated from the sunnah of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, digressed, departed away from that tariq Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, from the way of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah la yughayru ma biqawmin hatta yughayru ma bi anfusihim. Allah ta'ala will not change the condition of a people unless and until they change that condition within themselves. So what has happened to this ummah? Allah Ta'ala made this ummah low. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them like almost like they worth nothing. Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. This ummah has become like a dish. You know, when people all come to a bowl and there is food in it and things like that, or a tray with food that has been put down there, and everybody is rushing it, it's like everybody is rushing to come and eat at this ummah. And befitting is the words of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith sahih of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. The hadith is narrated by Dawood. قال حديث ثوبان قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يوشك الأمم أن تداعى عليكم كما تداعى الأكلة إلى قصعتها. Says the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in the beginning of this hadith, the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says that soon it will be, in other words, it's on the verge, that people of the world are going to invite one another. You know, like you invite people to come and eat, to come and have lunch, to come and have supper, or whatever. They are going to amalgamate, they're inviting one another to attack you, to eat you. كما تداعى الأكلة إلى قصعتها. Just like people are invited to come and eat from the dish. فقال قائل وَمِنْ قِلَّةٍ نَحْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ, are we going to be but a few, Ya Rasulullah? قَالَ بَلْ أَنْتُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ كَثِيرٌ. No, says the Nabi, you will be many. There will be lots. What the Muslims today is what? 1.5, 2 billion? 2 billion Muslims on the dunya. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ ولا ينزعن الله من صدور عدوكم المهابة منكم. Says the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, ولكنكم غثاء كغثاء السيل. You will be like the foam on the sea. You will be like the scum. You know the scum that rides on the waves at the sea. What happens to that? That scum is blown from one side, it's hit from this side to that side, and whatever the case may be, it's worthless, it's worth nothing. So the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, you're going to become like that. وَلَيَنْزِعَنَّ اللَّهُ مِنْ صُدُورِ عَدُوِّكُمْ الْمَهَابَ مِنْكُمْ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take out fear of those that are considered to be enemies. Allah will take out fear out of their hearts. They won't fear you, nothing. وَلَا يَكْذِفَنَّ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمُ الْوَهَنِ. But Allah will put in your hearts wahan. What is wahan? فَقَالَ قَائِلْ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَمَا الْوَهَنِ. What is it, Ya Rasulullah? What is this wahan? The Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَاهِيَّةُ الْمَوْتِ. It's your love for this world and your dislike to die. Your love for this world and your dislike to die. We have become so attached to this world. We have become so attached to everything that is around. Whatever the waist comes up, there is hairstyle, we follow hairstyle. Earrings in the ears, we follow earrings in the ears. And whatever the case may be, we are there. But we dislike to die. When you speak about death with somebody, look at the Sahaba of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. They said to the enemy, death is more encouraged, is more welcome to us than living in the way that we are. But when we look at ourselves today, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease and elevate our position to one of being true to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we do not follow everything that we see. The Nabi says in a hadith, لا يتبعن سنن من قبلكم شبرا بشبر وذراعا بذراع حتى لو سلكوا جحر دب لسلكتموه. Rawal Bukhari. Says the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam that you will follow the traditions of those before you, the traditions of what people do, shibran bi shibran, handspan to handspan, wa dhira'an bi dhira'in, and armspan by armspan. So even if they were to go into a hole of the lizard, then you would also want to go into that hole. So therefore the ummah at the moment, they have become like that. You know, when you boil water and that froth that is on the surface, the ummah has become like that. Garbage of the world And the Ummah now at the moment lives like small scattered nations around the world, fighting each other, having war with each other, geographical boundaries that has been created by themselves. Nationalism is the order of the day, and everybody raises their flag for their country, and everyone is guided by the secular laws. Politicians, the same thing. They just run with whatever goes there and so on. So this ummah become low after having honor. This ummah become ignorant after being the maintainers and the masters of knowledge. The ummah become weak after possessing all of this strength. So what has happened? It means that we are at the trailing end of the procession. The trailing end of the procession, and just yesterday we were leading the caravan. We were leading the procession, leading with power, leading with wealth, leading with knowledge, and now we eat the crumbs from the table. Yesterday we were the beacon of guidance, and now today, nothing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therefore makes it clear to us on what exactly is the position of the ummah, and everything that is happening happens in total agreement to the universal laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's not going to change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to change that. Is not going to substitute it with anything. What is required? What is required is that there will have to come a change from us towards this deen. To be more concentrated on our deen, to be more obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be more carrying out the sunnah of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah la yughayru ma biqawmin hatta yughayru ma bi anfusihim. Allah is not going to change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. So that then is going to beg a question. That is going to beg a question. The question that you ask yourself, that I ask myself, and that is, what have you done for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah has given you how long you're on the dunya? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. What have we done for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because wallahi, when we start working for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and start getting off and moving, then you will see the wrong that is happening in society is not going to happen. It's not going to rise. It's not going to rise. But it only rises when we do nothing. So what have you done for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And many in the community, and sometimes specifically the shabab, the youth, they ask, they say, you know what, I would like to do something for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just that I don't know what I should do. I don't know, what is it, what position, what should I play, what role am I going to play, and things like that. Now, this is something concerning. This is something that is worrying. When a person doesn't know what is it that is wajib upon him or compulsory on you that you should do in order for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you ask yourself, how can that be? That is so because this issue of doing something for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in the heart. It's not worrying, it's not playing there every day. And sometimes we only move when we are intensely affected. We either see a video and we are affected by the speaker and the way that he comes across, or by the khatib in the masjid when he speaks and he gives his Jum'ah lecture, or whatever else we find ourselves in, and we are moved by that. Our emotions is moved by that, and we want to tell ourselves, now I want to do something for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is it. Now I want to do something, but in reality it is not there every day. And this is the difference that we are asking, is that idea of doing something for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be occupying our minds every minute of the day, should be occupying our minds in the day, in the night, when we wake, when we go sleep, in secret, in open, whatever the case may be. It's something that must keep the mind occupied all the time, that a Muslim must ask himself every time, what have I done for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now, I'm not saying that all other things are not important, whether that comes to your job or to your wealth or to your wife or your children and so on, car, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying that that is not important. What I'm saying is that is all important, but make your priority what your concern is for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you have not been created on this dunya, you have not been created except to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We have not created jinn and mankind, says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except that you must worship me. That's Surah Al-Dhariyat. So therefore the objective of your life, the occupation that should keep yourself busy, is the one on what is it that I am doing for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many that believe that doing this, calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen, those are for the ulama, those are things for the du'at. And I tell you that your Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam call people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even in the mall, the Nabi alayhi salam call people, and his uncle would come behind him and tell the people, this man is crazy, this man is something wrong with his head, don't follow him. How much have you spent on calling people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much sacrifice have we done to call people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is not just a job for ulama and du'at. Everybody can do that. Now let me give an example of what I am saying. The example that I'm saying is At-Tufail ibn Amr. At-Tufail ibn Amr, he comes to Mecca, but he comes at a time when the battle is raging between the idolaters, the mushrikeen, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sadah of the Quraysh, the nobles of the Quraysh and the leadership of the Quraysh, they are all sitting there, and they see here this person by the name of At-Tufail ibn Amr. He is coming, and they say, wait, come here Tufail, we've got to warn you. We have a bala that has come to us. We have a trial and tribulations that has come. There's appeared amongst us this man. He is breaking up our community. He is causing division in the community. There's disunity, there's separation, and so on. A son is separated from the father. And if you wish your leadership not to be affected, then this is what we advise you. We warn you, don't listen to the man. Don't even listen to the man, because in his words it is like it is magic. It affects you immediately. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about that in Surah Fussilat, ayah number 26. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَسْمَعُوا لِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَالْغَوْا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تغلبون. That these mushrikeen, these idolaters, they said one to the other, لا تسمعوا لهذا القرآن. Don't listen to that Quran. Don't listen to that book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather make a noise when you hear somebody's reciting it, or when you hear that their prophet is reciting it, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَغْلِبُونَ, so that you will not be overpowered by the words of this Quran. So they continue to warn At-Tufail ibn Amr, and to the point that he goes and he puts cotton wool in his ears, determined that he is not going to listen to the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and neither is he going to be affected by this sihr, by this magic that comes from the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But At-Tufail says, Wallahi, these things just happen as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows. While he has the cotton wool in the ears, he could still hear the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam recite. So I went a bit closer, and I saw the Nabi Muhammad ﷺ by the Kaaba, and I told myself, man, how can this be? I'm a clever man, I'm an intelligent man, I'm also a poet, and he was a poet, a very good poet. And I'm sure, how am I going to make a judgment call on a man and I haven't even heard him? So now he takes out the cotton wool and he goes closer, wants to hear. And when he hears the Holy Quran being recited by the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a beautiful melodious voice, he's moved. He's moved by it, and he says, no man, how could I have avoided this? This sounds so beautiful. No, I'm going to go closer and I'm going to find out what is it, right? And he goes closer to the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to the point that he comes and he says, this is after the Nabi Muhammad left the Kaaba, and he says, Ya Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, A'rid alayya amrak. What? Tell me, what is the issue with you? What's the problem here? Right? So the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam explains to him Islam in the most simplest of forms. In the most simplest of forms. And at Tufail, he says, Wallahi, I have not seen something more beautiful or more just than the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, than the deen of Islam. And he puts out his hands and he gives the pledge of allegiance to the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, give bay'ah. And At-Tufail then says the Shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Alright. And then Tufail then afterwards find himself in his position, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is approached by him and he says, Ya Rasulullah, arsilni da'iyah تعلمت يا طفل ترسلني داعية إلى قوم دوس, and send me as a person to call to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to my people. Now one has to ask yourself the question, here is At-Tufail, he is asking and realizing there is great responsibility of becoming Muslim, and he is saying, Ya Rasulullah, appoint me to call people to the deen of Islam. Now one has to ask yourself, and I'm sure in today's time you will all ask, what education do you have? What Islamic education you have in order to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You know nothing, you just became Muslim. But it is feeling that responsibility. It is feeling that responsibility that you have in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is that service. You want to be of service in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So At-Tufail has moved his mouth, has moved his lips with the Shahada, and then day after immediately he now wants to call his people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam then did exactly that. The Nabi put him in charge. He can call to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because this is a man of responsibility, right? And he says, Ya Rasulullah, make dua for me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must give me something special. Something special Allah ta'ala must give to me in terms of my da'wah ila Allah ta'ala. So the Nabi made dua, and Allah ta'ala placed a beautiful nur on his face and so on. And then when he gets to his people, he decides, I need to change this. I need to change this. And he says, Ya Allah, place this nur and put it on my tongue. Because when people see the nur on my face, they're going to be freaked out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers his dua, and he goes to his people and he calls them to Islam and so on. But he becomes frustrated because they are not listening. They're not listening. He goes back to the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says to him, Ya Rasulullah, make dua against these people, Allah destroy them all, they're not listening to me. And the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam made dua, Allah mahdi dusan wa'ti bihim. Oh Allah, grant guidance to the tribe of Dus, and let them come into the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the people responded, he goes back, and they became Muslim, and they came in their droves saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at the head of all of those that came from those, you won't believe, was a person in the personality of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, from the Qabila Doors, one of the most famous of Sahaba, of companions of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, that had narrated so many ahadith of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. So again we say At-Tufail didn't have a degree. He was eager to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was eager to do something for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is your turn. This is your chance to call people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all min al-muttaqeen wa min al-muhsinin wa min ibad al-salihin. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.